Hello, Jeff Coltin.
Hi, Skye. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us on Life Before the Virus. So, you work in the political arena, you're a reporter, and tell us how your role has changed now in this pandemic.
Political reporting has become coronavirus reporting in many ways. In fact, just today I was working on a story that wasn't about coronavirus, and it was kind of a relief. I was kind of happy to be to be focusing on something that wasn't directly connected to this horrible disease and the economic destruction and the death. And I've gotten a not a unique perspective on that, but I've been the one that's been updating City and State's coronavirus numbers tracker. So I've been very closely following the trends, the daily death count in the state, the city, the number of people that have been found to be, positive for the disease in every county. That's been very harrowing to follow that, but also an interesting opportunity and one that I'm glad that we can share this information with the public.
So, how do your sources differ from your go-to sources pre-virus and now during the pandemic?
Well, I'm reporting on coronavirus, but I'm really reporting on the government and the political response to coronavirus. So the sources, in many ways, stay the same. I'm still talking to the elected officials. Obviously, the one we're listening to the most is Governor Cuomo. But for a couple stories here and there, especially one I reported with my colleagues about why New York was being hit so hard by the coronavirus as opposed to other states, other cities, other countries. We had to talk to a lot of medical experts, people from Columbia, NYU, all the med schools and whatnot, and get their opinion on that. It's kind of been an interesting cross between medical reporting and our typical political stuff.
So, what are some of the differences in the stories now that you're focusing on? Like, do you cover anything election related now?
Very much so. So I'm kind of the primary election reporter at City and State. I've really taken that on. And gosh, everything has been changing. Just yesterday, Tuesday, April 28th, I think 9 p.m. hit, and I got a little phone notification that said, presidential polls close. And it broke my heart. That was, I probably set that notification in my phone 6 months ago when that date was set for New York's presidential primary. Of course, as we know, a month ago, the presidential primary was combined with the June primary, and then just this week it was canceled altogether. So this this night, which is usually huge for myself as a political reporter and everybody in the political world, it's just not happening. Of course, other elections are still happening, and I wrote a big story for City and State about how coronavirus is affecting the elections and affecting politics. And it's affecting in so many ways, but one of them is we think that this is actually going to help incumbents hold on to power for a variety of reasons, and it's going to make it more difficult for insurgents to break through and win this year.
So, how do you think? Tell us more about the article that you wrote. How do you think these elections will be impacted, especially the June primary when, like you just said, the presidential primary was canceled, but there are still primary elections happening in June?
Yeah, so the Democratic primaries, the story for the past few cycles has really been these, more progressive upstart challengers taking on quote unquote establishment incumbents. The prototype being AOC taking down Joe Crowley in 2018. So many candidates are trying to do the same thing in 2020, and it's going to be really hard. The path to victory in the past has been really hitting the doors hard, knocking on doors, petitioning, talking to candidates, they're talking to voters, convincing them that they want to vote for change. This year, everybody is stuck at home. You can only go on the internet. It's much harder to break through. Social media is always an aspect, but I don't know if social media is really going to be bigger this year than in the past. Fundraising is way down, so which hurts challengers more than it hurts incumbents. And also the ballots are going to be crowded. There were fewer ballot challenges this year. So in many cases, there's multiple challengers taking on incumbents. And, the general thought is they might cancel out the anti-incumbent vote, and incumbents are going to cruise to victory. That's only a small part of it. I've got so many more reasons, but I think it's a pretty strong case.
How do you think it's going to go? Like, I just hung up with Carolyn Maloney and we talked about her election in June, and the plan is now her office. She was asking my political club if everyone can mail someone an absentee ballot. Do you think that's going to get confusing if someone who's not used to receiving a ballot receives now multiple ballots? How do you think that's going to play out?
I think it's going to be very confusing, and I think it's on the media, and it's on the government, and it's on elected officials themselves to really do their best to educate voters about what is happening with this election. We know, at least as of now, polls will be open, probably fewer than usual, but still polls will be open, but everybody is going to get mailed an absentee ballot application. It's a real challenge for the city board of elections, for the state board of elections to work this out. And the results of this, how it's going to affect individual races, has yet to be seen. It's just a complicated calculus since we haven't ever seen this before. But yeah, that said, a lot of pressure on myself, on my colleagues, and on politicians themselves to explain what will be happening, how to vote, how you should only send in one ballot, how you actually need to apply for an absentee ballot instead of just being sent one. It's a doozy.
Right, because you're not mailed the ballot. You're mailed an application to apply for a ballot, and then you receive the ballot, which you have to mail in.
Yes, and supposedly that is to stay in line with the state constitution. It would be a violation if they sent you a ballot directly. And of course, it has a variety of implications for who votes, how many votes, that sort of thing. And I'm going to be very excited to see the results this year, even more excited than usual to see the results.
So as a reporter, what job are you taking on in educating people about this process?
Hopefully people are still focusing on politics and on government. I think one of the highest callings of a political reporter is to hold government accountable. And I think a lot of my colleagues are doing a great job of that. This is a very high pressure time for government. And I think it's important for, journalism not to stop and for people to, give the full picture to our readers, to our viewers. So I'm trying to be a small cog in that machine, and to hold government accountable in this very crucial time.
So how often are you writing and reporting now compared to prior to the virus?
I'd say my hours have increased. Part of that is just working from home. I'm never away from my computer. I can constantly get on it. But my hours have definitely increased as I've been working to just follow all the competing storylines and everything that's going on, and elections on top of this. It's been a very busy time, but I'm very lucky to still have a job while many of my colleagues have been furloughed or laid off. So I'm very lucky for that, and I'm lucky that I have a job that I really enjoy and I'm able to share with the public.
And lastly, what about these city and state events? You normally have a ton of events. Are you going to be doing any Zoom get-togethers through city and state?
Yeah, our events are one of my favorite things, just getting people that care about government and politics together in the same room. We have been doing webinars about weekly. This week we had Nydia Velasquez, Gail Brewer, and Small Business Commissioner Greg Bishop together on a webinar talking about how small businesses are weathering this crisis. And we have more coming up. The Emergency Management Commissioner is going to be on next week. So they're great. I think they're really engaging, and we've gotten a good response. They've been, I think, almost full every time. So it's been good to see that we can still do events even remotely.
So thank you for all your work, Jeff Coltin, and keep it up, and we'll be following along.
Thank you so much, Skye.